Oilers Live Podcast.
Welcome to Oilers Live Podcast. This is the post NHL Draft Lottery edition, episode 24, whatever you want to call it. I have got the usual suspects on the podcast again tonight. I've got Sean from the oilnight.ca, and I've got Kelly from beerleagueheroes.com. And depending on how nice you are to me tonight, that'll be the order of priority. I've had you guys on just recently. I want to thank you again, as always, for joining the show.
No worries.
Thanks for having us.
So tonight we've got, we just watched a couple of games of hockey. We've had the NHL Draft Lottery. First off, guys, what do you think of the format? Doing the 15 through 4 and then doing the top 3 later on in the second intermission. Whoever wants to jump on that, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. It was either way for me. I don't really care. I can, life's busy enough that I don't need to stop and get all worked up over the splitting up of the lottery. You know what I mean? So I didn't really care.
Yeah, it's fine for you. Sean, do you like that new format?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even watch it. I just relied on Twitter when Kelly tweeted out. He put on me that who got what. I was like, okay, that's fine. It saved me a lot of time. So, yeah, it didn't really make a difference to me. I wasn't really anticipating us getting a top 3 pick. It would have been great, but yeah, didn't make a difference.
I think if I had one complaint, it's why even do 15 through 4, right?
Uh-huh.
Just do 3, 2, and 1, and keep the rest a surprise. I mean, when they did that part of the draw, of course, everybody knew who the 3 were. It was just a matter of the order.
Yeah.
And, I guess a big congrats goes out to Buffalo, right? Picking at number 1. And, I know some Sabres fans. Actually, I know all of the Sabres fans. And, they constantly heckle me and hate Oilers fans for the sole reason that, we took McDavid. And my guess is those Sabres fans that I know have a McDavid Sabres jersey somewhere in their closet.
That's funny.
And so they're pretty upset about that. So, congrats to them. They get their first overall in Dahlin. I also thought, Carolina needed a good top pick. I thought that was good. Montreal, I maybe would have rather seen Ottawa up there, but, I think, and we've talked about this at length, the top 4, you're all right 1 through 4, right? You're getting a hell of a player, right? It's just a matter of really where 2, 3, and 4, who you pick there.
Yeah.
So, guys, tonight we're going to do. We discussed 2 parts. First part, we'll talk about the Oilers, what they're going to do or what they might do at number 10, maybe what needs they have, and then second part, we'll talk about some of the coaching rumors out there, and then the fact that we're getting Todd McLellan back for at least the first part of the season, hopefully full season because the Oilers are doing well. And we'll talk about some of the rumors and what's next in terms of the Oilers and into the next season. So first we'll start. Kelly, you did an article on beerleagueheroes.com today. Oilers dropped to number 10. The options. Give me your thoughts on what you think the Oilers are going to do with the pick. And then maybe what options there are if you were sitting in the GM seat today, who you might pick at number 10. Kelly.
Yeah, well, I wasn't shocked that they dropped down. I figured someone would jump over them in the lottery. So, we had kind of a nice wide selection of players that are kind of slated to go in that area. The pundits like Jim Matheson and Kurt Levins are already talking about the Oilers moving that pick, and Jim Matheson brought up Ristolainen's name out of Buffalo, and Kurt Levins thinks they'll take the pick and package it with a roster player, and he specifically said a signed prospect and swing that for a top pairing defenseman. I don't think they need to do it. I think they should stop trying to force things like they have been. Every summer they try and make a deal that tries to, push them through that door to, Pacific Division dominance. And it 1 year it worked, and the other years it kind of backfired on them. I'm not sure if it's a good idea. They be dealing their first rounder for another contract, given where they're sitting in the salary cap right now. I mean, unless they can move out of a salary with that first rounder, of course.
Does your gut tell you anything in terms of what you think Chiarelli will do with that pick? Do you have a gut feeling on this, or you just kind of wait and see?
I think he wants a defenseman, and so he'll wait to see who's available at 10. And most, I don't think there's going to be a defenseman there to his liking, unless someone goes off the board ahead of him. Maybe Ty Smith from Spokane, but he's another left-handed defenseman. But maybe Noah Dobson could drop, because I'd feel he's not quite as developed as Evan Bouchard, and if a team wants a safe pick, they'll take Bouchard over Dobson. So I don't think he'll move it unless something jumps out at him, to be honest.
Yeah, I think. The general thought, right? Originally, at least a couple weeks back, is everybody was somewhat concerned, or maybe not concerned is not the right word, but that he would move whatever pick if it was later on in the draft. So you kind of, what I'm getting from you is that if there's a good defenseman at that pick, he takes it. If not, then perhaps we're going to see a trade.
Yeah, it's possible. Like, how it is. Like, anything could happen at the draft. My personal feeling is that he shouldn't trade that pick, and he should just play the long game, keep adding to the prospect, and adding prospects to their pipeline, and develop them properly. I don't know if Jay Woodcroft is going to do that in Bakersfield, but this is the process to which good teams become successful long term, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. So if we go, you did your new article is Oilers dropped to number 10, where you took basically a list of some of the players from many of the pundits out there and some of the draft prospect ratings. Anybody on there that at number 10, if you're going to take the best available player, anybody on there that sort of strikes you as being a real, like, if he's available at number 10, we've got to take that guy?
Well, so the list is from mynhldraft.com. You can go there, and on the left hand side there's a link for 2018 draft rankings, and there it takes you to like a page where all like the lists are kind of consolidated there. You get McKenzie and Cornianos, Button Merrick, a future consideration of McKean, so on and so forth. And so all I did in the article today was I just found the three most prominent names amongst those lists of media guys that cover the draft, and the three names that came up were Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Isaac Lundestrom from Sweden, and Joel Farabee out of the U.S. National Development Program. And it's really up to the person reading as to which they would prefer. I noticed there was no defenseman listed there. Noah Dobson comes up, Quinn Hughes comes up a little bit, just once or twice though. But it's all forwards at that point. And so if the Oilers want to pick up a skilled playmaking center with size, then the Finn Kotkaniemi is the guy that they could take there. He kind of, at the beginning of the year, he was high in the rankings, and then he fell out a little bit. He's been playing in the SM Liga, the top division in Finland, I think, for the whole season, and his numbers are pretty similar to what Puljujärvi put up in his draft year. The difference being, Puljujärvi is a center, or Puljujärvi is a winger, and Kotkaniemi is a center. Now, I don't watch the game, so I don't know if he actually played center in that league or not. But for him to be playing in that division the whole year is, it's a nice sign for a prospect. A good thing about drafting a European is you can bring them over and send them straight to the AHL as well and get them going in your system right away. The Swede, Lundestrom, he plays in Luleå and in the SHL, the top division in Sweden. He, in the article, I've got a report comparing him to Mikko Koivu. He's not quite that big. He's only 6 feet and 185 pounds, but his coach thinks he looked like Peter Forsberg at 17. So that I like that comparison. And personally, I like players that are a little more physical and have a little more edge to their game, but also have some skill. So for Lundestrom, he's very good on the forecheck. He's quite fast and quite smart. So maybe we're thinking of someone along the lines of Victor Arvidsson, or maybe Kapanen a little bit from Toronto.
Yep.
And so he's already at that, like his physicalness. He's already there. He could play the pro game, but I'm not sure if the offense would come along that quickly. So it might take some time to develop a player like that. And then with the last guy is Joel Farabee. And if you've been watching the U18s, you'll know that he's been on a line with Jack Hughes and Oliver Wahlstrom. And they've been lighting that tournament up right now. In fairness, Kotkaniemi is also on a really good line that's tearing up the U18s as well. But Farabee, he's a little bit slight. He's only 6 feet and 165 pounds. He shoots left and he plays on the wing. He's quite fast, very high energy, very hardworking, and he's got a very high hockey IQ. And the fact that he can play with a talent like Jack Hughes speaks to his ability as well. So he's not the biggest guy. Maybe like something like Jake Gensel, or there's a comparison to Michael Granlund in the report on the webpage. But he's got sandpaper to his game, and I like that. So next season,
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I mean, if at number 10, let's say that Farabee is available, and I've heard some people talk about Farabee before. I've got some small challenges with the guy like Farabee. We have Yamamoto coming up, right? I think there's only so many little guys you can have, and little skilled guys that you can have on a team, in my mind. And maybe the league's changing. Maybe Tampa Bay proves me wrong a little bit on that, but I don't know that we need another guy like that. The other thing, and tell me if you think this is something to be concerned about. I mean, we saw Spencer Fu go out to Calgary, hotly contested as to where he would go, and lots of people wanted him. And there's a guy that, while he's got some talent, and I saw him play in the last Battle of Alberta game in Calgary. So I did get a chance to see him live. And he has talent. That part is obvious. At his size, I wonder how much of his success came from his line mates. And a guy like Farabee, I haven't watched him play, but I'm really curious. We know Wahlstrom. We know Wahlstrom's got a shot that everybody compares to an NHL level shot. And you've been living under a rock if you don't know who Jack Hughes is, or seen any, tape for this guy. And if you're into this draft rankings, etc. So, how much of that does he gain from playing with those two guys? I mean, is he maybe rated a little bit higher just because of where he is? Just curious what your thought is on that.
Yeah, no, I asked around about that earlier in the season because I was curious about that too. Because, anyone that plays with a guy like Jack Hughes, you'd think would be able to put up points. But he was kind of running the show before Hughes got there too. So it's just an added bonus that, he's producing with Hughes as well as without him, right? So Hughes hasn't been playing with the U18 team all year. He started with the U17 and then graduated up because he's just destroying the U17s. I think maybe a realistic comparison for Farabee might be Kyle Connor. Not a big guy either, and same sort of same sort of makeup, same sort of style of play. I think that's an optimistic way of looking at Farabee if you have any doubts. But the college players can always refuse to sign. I mean, Blake Wheeler did it with Arizona, right?
Yeah.
So there's always that risk, but you really think he's going to risk, not playing with McDavid?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question. I guess I would be, and we were just kind of going off who's available at number 10, and I think I'd be very surprised if Farabee is our pick, depending on, there's so many players in and around that space that I think would be better suited to the Oilers. Farabee is not one of them. But if you go, and my curiosity is, and we'll get into that, Sean, as well with you, is do the Oilers pick, who the best player is at number 10, or do they go by need? And if they go by need, I just don't see Farabee being even on the radar. Of course, a lot goes into the interviews beforehand, right? And of course, I haven't seen Farabee play either, so I couldn't. Maybe there's something about him that the Oilers would just be really big on. I guess the Boston connection. Who knows? I don't know.
I think also he's got a really, a high end work ethic, and he's fast, and he can shoot the puck. Like, there's a lot of boxes to check off for him when it comes to the current Oilers, management staff. So the other thing is, the Oilers need, they're not quite as concerned with their defense right now. We got some good players coming in on the defense, but there's not a lot coming in on the forward. And I would venture to say that it's not better. Maybe it's easier to take a forward that high than it is a defenseman. Maybe. I know that Sean put out a couple of tweets today, talking about how deep the draft was. And, you could get a comparable player at, number 10 and number 30 in there. So and that's kind of the way I see it going, where should the Oilers choose to take Ty Smith at 10 and their next draft pick is whatever, 41 or something like that, they take Ty Dellandrea, or maybe Dominic Bach drops low or something like that.
Yeah.
Or the opposite end, where they take a forward like Farabee, and then in the second round they find a way to get a guy like Kalen Addison, right? So, and I think Sean could speak a little more to the CHL guys than I can on today.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe, Sean, I know you've been sitting patiently there. Why don't we skip over to you? That's a good question. I mean, one of the things maybe you can touch on is, the CHL, who you think might still be available at number 10, whether the Oilers might take them. And then, one of the things I'm kind of curious about, and maybe you have an opinion on it, but there's always one sort of sleeper in the draft. Who from the CHL might be, a good sleeper pick, somebody that everybody's taking possibly to go a little bit later. I think, one of those guys is, depending on who you talk to, right? There's only really a few people that have Ty Smith in the top 10, right? A lot of them have him, sitting around 15th or in or around there. But Ty Smith could be one of those guys. I know, we've talked about Evan Bouchard before. You thought him being rated as high as he was a little bit. So there's going to be some busts as well. I'm curious what your thought is. But anyway, let's maybe start with the same question at number 10. Do you think the Oilers will keep the pick? If they do, what do you kind of think they'll do with it, or if they trade it? What's your thoughts there, Sean?
You guys kind of stole all my thunder there. It's kind of hard to unravel.
Yeah.
Okay, so for number 10, I mean, Shirley kind of hit on it before. He would certainly consider moving it. So there's two trains of thought here: what I think he'll do and what I would do, kind of thing. Let's just say if he keeps the pick, I think it's probably a no-brainer. I agree. Ty Smith's going to be there at number 10. I don't see anybody taking him before that. He's there at number 10, and the Oilers do draft. They're probably going to take him. He's the most likely. He's got the big shot, and he's the puck mover and all that. And you got to keep in mind, anybody you're taking at number 10 more than likely isn't going to make the NHL for a couple of years. So if you draft Ty Smith, you're expecting him to replace Sakura or Chris Russell in a couple of years. He's not going to step in next year and contribute. And that doesn't really matter who you take as far as the defenseman number 10. Odds are they're not gonna make the team. So you got to look towards the future. You take the best player, and if Ty Smith is there, he's probably the best fit for the Oilers long term. Personally, I think it is a great fit. I would love for them to go off the board a little bit. I mean, we got to, when we're considering what's going to happen, you try and get in the GM's mind, right? He's kind of on the hot seat. He needs to add to this club this year, right? Or next year, I guess. He can't necessarily wait around for guys to just develop. And I know a lot of fans are saying, well, just take the best player and then they can help us down the road. But that really doesn't help the team next year, and that doesn't help his job security. So if he were to go off the board and look for an impact forward, and you talk about sleepers, not necessarily in the CHL, but I've touched on this many times in the past, I think a case can be made that one of the most NHL-ready players and in this draft would be Vitaly Kravtsov, because he's come from the KHL. He's already played with older players. You would think he would have a smoother transition potentially to the NHL, and he's got a ton of talent, and he's 6'2", 170 pounds, so he's a bigger prospect. Like I said, he's played against men, so if they were to take him at number 10, for example, and he's a right wing, a left shot right wing, that's a guy it's kind of a boomer bust at number 10 potentially, but he's a guy that could come in and maybe make your team out of training camp, because again, he has played in the KHL. And he's got a load of skill, and he can skate. And I would love for the Oilers to just say, you know what, screw it, we're going to go for it. We're going to try and get somebody to play with Draisaitl this year, even at number 10, and take that pick. That would be real ballsy. But, again, if Chiarelli's looking to add somebody next year and he can't get, anybody in a trade or whatever, maybe he pulls the trigger on somebody like that, as opposed to a guy like Farabee that may take a few years or whatever to make an impact, right? So, if they keep the pick, ideally that's probably what's going to happen. It's going to be Ty Smith, or maybe they reach a bit and go for Kravtsov. But I mean, I compare his game to Kuznetsov. I love the way he plays the game. So that's kind of what I think they'll do if they keep it. Now, if ideally, I think again, if you just kind of look at the GM's perspective, he doesn't really have the luxury of time waiting, but he certainly doesn't want to make a stupid move and it backfire again. I think it's pretty much a no-brainer that he's going to trade the pick. He's going to move it. Now, I don't know if he's going to be able to get somebody like Ristolainen. That might be wishful thinking. And maybe Justin Falk, but that's a little bit too high. It's top 10 pick for Justin Falk. I don't know. But for me personally, I think the best course of action would be just to trade down. And you guys talked about earlier about how deep the draft is, and Kelly was kind of alluding to that. The difference between Ty Smith at number 10 and Calen Addison, one of you guys mentioned, who's projected to go, late first round, is very small in my opinion. And Calen Addison is a right shot defenseman. He had 65 points in 68 games this year. He's 5'10". What is he? 5'10", 179. And that's about the same size as Ty Smith, and Ty Smith had 73 points in 69 games. So you're not really, I think they had 3-goal difference as well. You're not really losing a lot of production there. And so if the Oilers were to package the number 10 pick and move down to say, somewhere in the 20s, and also acquire an NHL-ready top 6 forward or top 4 defenseman in the process, for example, let's just say, Matt Zuccarello and, the 25th overall pick, you're still getting a first-round pick. You're still getting a quality prospect for the future, but you're also getting somebody you can plug into the lineup next year. So that kind of kills 2 birds with 1 stone, right? So ideally, that's what I would like to see. And I think if there is an opportunity to do that, I think that's what Chiarelli will do, because, again, he did mention that pick is in play. It's a lot harder to move up or get a big-time player like Ristolainen as opposed to moving down and acquiring somebody else, right? So, in a perfect world, I think that's probably the best bet is to trade down, get a top 6 guy, and get that a comparable. And Ty Dellandrea is the same thing. He's a late first rounder, potential early second rounder. I think he's as good as Joe Veleno, if not better. And he's projected several picks later. So you move down, you pick up that guy, plus you get Zuccarello or Chris Kreider, whoever. I mean, you got to get the most bang for your buck. Otherwise, you sit at number 10 and you're drafting the guy that's not even going to impact your lineup in, 2, 3, 4 years, and you're still looking for another defenseman, or you're still looking for an impact forward, right? So in free agency or whatever, and then you're going to overpay. So I think that's the route I would go, and hopefully that's the route Chiarelli goes as well.
Yeah, I think what I think that's good. Good analysis. I look at this draft, and every time I look at the guys in there, we have this sort of top 4, top 5, which are pretty much unchanged, right? Everybody kind of has sort of figured out who those guys are, and then I think from sort of 6 through 15, we've got another sort of grouping of players that are relatively similar. And then it drops off a little bit in my mind after that, 16 to 31, but still, reasonable with some upside. So, yeah, if they were to trade down, I think that would be probably one of the smarter moves. And I also, we haven't really said much, but I like this group in terms of how they pick prospects. I would put my faith in Chiarelli and his group of guys in making a good pick, right? And so if they did that and they thought that trading down, they could still kind of pick a guy that might be a year or two out and add somebody to the roster.
Yeah, I guess the only concern I would have,
great.
and we're looking at, I kind of disagree with Kelly a little bit as far as quality in the organization. I think they have a lot of good young forwards coming up with Benson and Maximoff and Yamamoto and some guys they've signed in for the Condors. But in the CHL, the only guy they had this year was Samorukov, and I'm not completely sold on him. So they really only got one guy in the CHL on defense that's coming. So if you could add a guy like Ty Smith, for example, again, you project him to make the team probably in 2-3 years or whatever. I think that's kind of more of a need, especially with, ideally they're going to move Sekera and Russell the next year or two as well. You're going to need replacements, and we've only got Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones kind of in Bakersfield. So I think that's definitely going to be a priority, the defense, if they do take that pick. But
So with Carolina moving up in the draft, I mean, what does that, maybe that Falk trade is there? Maybe it's not a first rounder.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, they who knows what they're going to do with their owner, and they don't even know who their GM is yet. I mean, obviously they've got a lot of defensive prospects, right? But they need guys up front, so they're no question they're going to take Svechnikov. But as far as adding somebody else to play with him, maybe they do move a Falk and get another impact center or whatever, right? Definitely a possibility there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I like your thinking in terms of trading down. I hadn't put a lot of thought into that. In fact, I'm guilty of never thinking about that option. A lot of times you just think to trade away the pick, but trading down is quite often, one of the better options. You at least keep a prospect in the system. I had to, as much as I hate to laugh at the Flames' expense, but they just look awful in terms of what they're picking. I think they don't pick first until 104 or something like that. And so, I don't ever, I think what at least we've learned from the past few years or a couple years is the importance of those picks in that, prospect pool. And it would not surprise me if we don't see another trade from Chiarelli in his career similar to the Reinhart trade. And I mean, that could go down as maybe one of the worst trades in the history of the Oilers, but it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't do that anymore, and he's a little bit more aware of just how valuable those picks and that prospect pool are for us.
Well, yeah. Well, you certainly don't want to fool around in the draft or move down if it's not considered a deep draft. And this is considered a very deep draft. And in fact, next year is supposed to be even deeper. So you got to kind of take that into consideration. Not every year is a good year to trade down, right? But this year is the exception where, like I said, there's many quality players at the back end of that first round that could have just as much an impact, if not more, than the guys, from 10 to 15. So it's something they should strongly consider, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree on that one. Okay, guys, I think, we chatted about the draft. We'll take a break here and then we'll come back. For those of you listening, though, please go to beerleagueheroes.com. Take a look at what Kelly's brought up some interesting reports and that on those three that might be available at number 10. If you go to theoilnight.ca, it's the second article in. It's Say Hello to Your Next Edmonton Oiler, where Sean, talks about what we need and where we might be picking. Ty Smith, of course, as you said, is probably a good pick at number 10. So anybody listening, theoilnight.ca and beerleagueheroes.com, we'll take a break.
Oilers Live Podcast.
Welcome back to Oilers Live podcast. I've got Sean from theoilnight.ca and Kelly from Beer League Heroes with me again. We're on the second half of the post-NHL Draft Lottery episode number 24. First half, we talked about, the Oilers now we know are at number 10. So we don't get a record first overall pick again. This half, I want to talk about some of the latest news with the Oilers. Maybe guys would just have a little chat. What do you think about the keeping McClellan on and some of the rumors that you heard? Maybe I'll get it started by saying, as you know, and as I've said many times on other episodes, I was very upset with McClellan's coaching this past season. I thought the whole coaching staff should be given the heave-ho. They were not. I was happy with keeping Chiarelli on board, at least for another season, even though, I saw some deficiencies in what he brought to the table. But, overall, I can see the strategy that he has. When I heard the rumor of Gulutzan as assistant coach, I heard it the day of his release from the Flames. I kind of made some jokes about it on Twitter because I didn't think, even remotely possible that he would be at the Oilers. And not to mention, I didn't think it was remotely possible. But the other thing is, I always find it odd when a guy goes from a head coaching position to an assistant coaching position. It's not something that, and other guys are looking for head coaches right now. Mm-hmm. So there's that. But when I heard, anyway, his name as assistant coach and Trent Yanni as another assistant, I want to say I'm all right with McClellan staying on with those three. I think that's a capable group. I think that that would be a group of coaches that I think could maybe achieve something with this team. And I'd be all for that. Of course, we're a long ways probably from hearing that. I haven't heard any more since the other day. There was, a lot of talk about it before they announced McClellan was staying on. So, whoever wants to talk, let me know. What do you think? What's your thoughts on McClellan staying on? Do you like what the rumors are, etc.?
Go ahead, Kelly.
Start again, hey?
Every time I put the ball in the air like that, Sean's always, Kelly, you go ahead.
Well, I figured I'd just talk for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. We had a good intermission though there. So anyway, Kelly, yeah. Your thoughts, Kelly. What's McClellan out? What do you think? And Sean, just pipe in if you have any thoughts. This is not the late night with the Oil Night, so no yelling and screaming, but feel free to be opinionated.
All right.
I'm okay with McClellan coming back because I'm curious to see if he can turn it around. But I wonder how he feels. He doesn't have his crutches anymore. The team basically said, well, that season sucked, and Woodcroft's gone, Johnson's gone. We're gonna bring in a couple other guys, and that's that. Albeit they're bringing in the rumored additions of Trent Yanni and Glenn Gulutzan. They're not guys that McClellan is unfamiliar with. He worked with Yanni before, and I don't know how close he is with Gulutzan apart from they went to Humboldt together, and they might have done some coaching clinics together, something like this.
So both Trent Yanni and Glenn Gulutzan, for those of you in the small town of Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan, that's where they're both from. There's not a lot of folks from there in total. And Saskatchewan's a pretty tight-knit community. As you know, their biggest export is people. And so they're all from there. They're all from Saskatoon, Humboldt, but Hudson Bay specifically for those Yanni and Gulutzan. So they, I guarantee you, they know each other quite well.
Well, those guys, excellent, good for them. When they're working together, that'll be a plus. I think that the Oilers are waiting for Manny Vivrios to finish up his year in I think it's Swift Current, right? And and then they'll announce the entire coaching staff when that's all done up. So if Swift Current goes all the way to the Memorial Cup, then we might have to wait a little longer. But I wonder who Woodcroft will have on his staff in Bakersfield, because now they're the way it looks is they're setting it up so that they have that continuity in playing style, and the message is the same from AHL affiliate to NHL club. And with the Oilers having all those like nice young players joining their the pro ranks next season, I think the timing is right to do that. I'm not sure if, like, does anybody know if Fleming was ever like the kind of like the first pick to coach Bakersfield or not? Because he's been with the club since Todd Nelson was there. Even back in the Oklahoma days, they just kind of kept him on because they didn't want to move him, or what's his deal?
Yeah, no idea there.
Yeah, but like I don't mind McClellan coming back, and if it all goes to shit, then they've got two guys who have previous NHL head coaching experience, waiting in the wings to sort out the rest of the season until the summer when they can go out and hire Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah.
So Boudreau's your guy.
Something like that. It's next summer, right? So get a whole year.
Yeah,
I
hope that we're not. I'm hopeful that we're not looking for a coach next summer. I think the big thing and why I'm all right with them keeping McClellan. You guys chime in if you want, but the one hesitation I always had, and as much as I was unhappy with him this year, is the revolving door we've had at coaching. And so, if we can find a way to keep a guy like that and keep some consistency, and everybody's, you guys know, we know, everybody's down on Chiarelli. Every second tweet on Oilers Twitter is, how much of an asshole he is, or how, idiotic he is. We finally kind of have some direction in Bakersfield. We've got some prospects. We've got, I think, how you can't see the strategy that he's got kind of going is beyond me. A lot of people point to that stupid video that was out of Chiarelli when he was doing the Sagan trade, right? Like, you see what they, cut and paste together onto a TV show. You don't get to see what's actually going on. It just sort of amazes me. I think, so anyway, at the end of the day, I'm pretty happy with keeping McClellan, if and only if they give him the right coaching staff on the side. Right.
Well, that's kind of the key, right? And you're kind of alluding to, when you're saying strategy with Chiarelli, you're kind of talking about the plan, as they say. A lot of people having fun with that on Twitter or whatever, but I think when you refer to the plan with Chiarelli, I mean, it's talking about organizational depth, it's talking about management structure, and it's just continuity from the top to the bottom, right? So by putting Woodcroft in the AHL, the same message is being delivered from the AHL to the NHL. So it is going to help, hopefully, the younger players transition when they do get called up. As far as McClellan himself, I mean, obviously I haven't been the biggest McClellan supporter as of late. I still think he should have been let go based on his performance last year. Let's be honest, it was awful. There were so many things that he did wrong that were just head-scratching decisions. And I don't think that he should be rewarded for that. But in the grand scheme of things, you look at, well, what other alternatives are there? And I mean, I believe if Quenneville was fired, we'd be having a totally different conversation right now. I think Quenneville would be the new head coach, but and then Trotz sounds like he's retiring, and Boudreau he's staying. So the Oilers don't really have a lot of other options to replace him. But yeah, bringing in assistant coaches with experience, sure, that makes sense. I hope it helps, but in the end of the day, McClellan's the guy that's got to kind of change his ways and get rid of that stubbornness and be willing to adapt sooner, and don't give such a long leash to guys like Lucic when they make mistake after mistake, and then punish a guy like Puljujärvi when he makes one turnover in his own zone. Right? He's really got a lot of changing to do. So hopefully he'll be able to do that next year. But I'm still a little pessimistic towards that.
So do you think he's got a short leash? Early on? I mean, if we come out of the gate, 0-5.
I think so. But the problem is, like, who are you going to replace him with, right? You're going to replace him with an assistant. Okay, well, sure. Well, you're replacing with a guy that just got fired the previous season. Like, is that really even an upgrade? And that's kind of the fine line, or that's kind of the, something you got to be careful about this year is, okay, great, we're going to stick with him for the sake of continuity and consistency. But if it doesn't work out, then you've kind of backed yourself in your corner. What kind of other options do you have 20 games into the season or 10 games in the season next year, right? So I don't know. It's a gamble. They're banking on him rebounding, I guess. They're going to surround him with as much talent as possible, but it's risky, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a bit of that concern in my head. I mean, if you take an 0-5 start, in my mind, you've just wasted a season, right? Like, that's the absolute last thing I want to see. But he brought this team to the playoffs the year before. I mean, a lot of good things happened to make that happen. We, had a relatively injury-free season. I think he can do it again. People are talking like Woodcroft, like that was some type of a promotion for him. I guarantee you that's not a promotion, right? Like, he's not looking at that as he's looking at that as he dodged a bullet and kept a job. But he's in the shithouse now, right? Like, I mean, you're not, and all respect to the folks out in Bakersfield, but Bakersfield's not LA, right? You don't go out there. It's an oil town, right? Like, you go out there because the work is there, not because it's California.
Well, if you incorporate the weather, it might be a promotion to him. But I agree with you. They're trying to spin it like it's a promotion, but it's like, what, we appreciate your loyalty and whatever. We're not just going to kick you out the door. We'll give you an opportunity somewhere else, and we'll just call it a promotion. But
yeah, and him and McClellan, of course, are. I think Kelly, you said 10 years they've been together. I didn't realize it. I wasn't adding in the Detroit years, but I mean, they're probably pretty good friends by now, you would assume.
You'd hope.
Yeah.
I think one thing that we have to consider is that the Oilers are starting their season out in Europe next year.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked at the historical results of teams that have started in Europe and how they finished in at the end of the year, but they'll I think I heard Bob Stauffer talking about it before, and he was saying what he thinks might happen is they'll go to Europe and start the season there, and then they'll come back and play a few games on the East Coast, and then go back and go back to Edmonton to start their homestand like that. And so there's a great possibility that they'll start the season off slow, just from having to travel so much, right?
Well,
yeah, no, you're probably. I mean, there is a good possibility. What do you know, Sean? Is there any history to that? I seem to think Colorado started out in Europe one year, right, and they came back and they were flat early, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, one thing I wanted, it kind of brings up another point. I can't remember who was talking about it, and maybe it was Stauffer, I'm not sure. But an important point we should bring up is the Oilers didn't really do any team building this previous offseason. And that, I think maybe Chiarelli kind of mentioned that before. And maybe that hurt them a little bit, coming out start the season. And I think if they go overseas, especially coming off a disappointing season last year, I think it might be a good thing. It'd be a positive where they do that kind of team bonding. They get over there. Hopefully they have some success, and I think they will because I mean, Draisaitl in Germany, he's going to be flying, right? And we got a bunch of Swedes on our team that are going to have good games, and guys are going to want to produce for them. I think they'll probably do well overseas, and the only concern would be maybe when they get back, how jet lagged are they or whatever. But I think overall, and you see in any sport really, it can really set you up for an entire season when you kind of have that bonding before the season, bring everybody together, they're all on the same page, all feeling good about themselves. That can carry you a season. So I think it's probably it's going to be a good thing. Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. It brought in my head though something, and it's kind of off topic, but what do you guys think about Puljujarvi? I mean, every time you see some stories on him, you hear anything, you talk. I mean, we're all on Twitter. If you see anything on Twitter, the guy's walking down the street by himself. Like, is he part of this team, or what's going on there? And is it even a problem?
Well, he does kind of have a little bit of a Yakupov feel to it. He's kind of like the outsider a little bit. I certainly get that feel. And I don't think the coach is doing the greatest job of kind of insulating or, surrounding him with confidence or whatever. But as a person, as a player, I think he'll be fantastic. He's just young. You just got to give him time, let him play out. All these, trade talks, people saying, let's get rid of Puljujarvi and for somebody else. I think that's ridiculous. I think you just let him develop, and I think he'll be fine. But yeah, it's hard not to kind of see a little bit of the Yakupov comparison with him, just as far as being that outsider.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Kelly?
Yeah, he seems to be a bit of an introvert at the moment. Maybe just he doesn't have anyone to talk to his own age on the team or something like this. I'm not sure if like Draisaitl and McDavid are comfortable playing with him yet, and I think he feels intimidated playing with them. Maybe there's a language barrier there. Maybe there's a cultural barrier there. It's tough to say, but I agree that the coaches have done him no favors. Whereas if he were on another team, perhaps the coaches would have, given him an opportunity to play on the power play a little bit more.
So on the ice, it feels like they really want him to succeed, like the other players. Like when Puljujarvi scores, they just kind of have that, hey, pool party scored, right? That kind of feel, right? Mm-hmm. But, off the ice, I mean, the one thing, I think it was a guy from Oilers Nation gave him a ride somewhere. Like, what, was in his car. And I think about this. This is an NHL player walking down the streets of Edmonton by himself. Where are the other guys? Right? I mean, part of what they used to say was the success of the boys on the bus, right? Mm-hmm. Was how tight those guys were, right? They did everything together. Talk to any alumni guys on any team, and teams are tight, right? Play hockey, right? Teams are tight. I don't get that feeling with him.
I don't know if hockey teams are like that anymore. I don't know if there's just because of the times they were like that, they all partied together and they could party together. There was no like social medias and stuff like that. They didn't have to be paranoid about being out in public and what they did and what they said. I think you show the Penguins, it looks like they hate each other on the ice. They sit there and they just yell at each other on the bench. And yet they're cup champions. And, at the end of the year when they're raising that trophy, they could care less what happened on the ice or whatever happened off the ice. They're champions. But, for Puljujarvi, he's progressing. You can see it. It's not as fast as people want him to, but he might have just turned 20. I'm not sure. He might still be 19. Like, he's so young, and he's just a man-child, right? So you think that he should be ahead of where he is, and along with his peers a bit more, but he's not. he's not Laine, he's not Matthews, and he's going to be a different player to those guys. I feel like, he sounds a lot like Thomas Hertl to me a little bit. It'll take him a little bit of time to get into his wheelhouse, but there's a player there, and to me he's progressing fine, and I hope that next year that the coaches give him a little bit more leash to do what he can on the ice, because he's got the tools, man. He's big, he can skate, he's strong, he's got a shot, and he just has to figure out how to put it all together. And if they put him out there like they did with Yakupov, they're gonna lose another really good talent, because I think he's got long-term potential written all over him.
Yeah, my thought too, and I didn't bring this up because I'm anti-Puljujarvi. In fact, I like the kid and hope he does well on the Oilers. Back to the McLellan conversation, I think he wasn't utilized properly. We, as a fan base and even all the pundits and everybody, kept talking about seeing him on the power play. We really didn't get a chance to see him on the power play all season.
No, and just a little bit too. You don't have to put him on there permanently, but every few games, let him get a feel for what it's like to be the trigger man on the left wall, because that's exactly what they need. The power play is just stuck on two guys, and it's McDavid and Draisaitl, and the other team knows how to box it out so that they don't have any opportunities. If they have threats on both walls and the defense, they can spread it out and they can get the defense running around. But they don't. They give it to McDavid and they say, well, Connor, you do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Guys, what do you think about keeping Schwartz on as goaltending coach? I mean, after a season that Talbot had. Any thoughts on that?
I think it's totally up to Talbot. I think you go to Cam Talbot and you say, how do you feel about the goalie coach? Are you comfortable with him or not? And if he says, I want you to bring him back, then you bring him back. And if he says, well, look into somebody else, then you do that. I think that's 100%. Because if you, it doesn't matter who you bring in a goalie coach. If he's not comfortable, if the goalie's not comfortable with him, or you get rid of a guy that he's comfortable with, then you're messing with his head. So I think you totally leave it up to the goalie.
What about video coaching? I mean, we kept, his name's escaped me now, but the video coach we kept too. And, I would suggest some of what we saw this year it seemed a lack of preparation. Any thoughts there?
Is that on the video coach though?
Well, some of it is, I think, for sure. I mean, that's why you have it. Yeah.
And the players have to buy into what he's talking about too, right? And it sounds like the players weren't buying into Jim Johnson's penalty kill philosophy, and they stopped buying into Jay Woodcroft's power play too. So if Woodcroft and Johnson and the video coach and McLellan were all on the same page and the team wasn't, then what can you do about that, right? I guess you bring in two coaches from the outside and start bringing in start preaching a different message, and then hope the players adapt to it. But how far down the ladder do we have to make changes?
Yeah. Any other thoughts in terms of the Oilers in the off season? I mean, I think, other than we're waiting for the assistant coaches, are we expecting any other sort of big announcements? Do you feel?
I don't think so. I know Peter Chiarelli and Chuck Fletcher are real tight, and they went to school together and whatever. It wouldn't totally shock me if somehow he came in some capacity, but I'm just wondering what they're going to do with Paul Coffey. Like, what's his role there? Is he just going to deliver coffee, or is he coming back? Or
He's done. I was talking to my guy the other day, and he was telling me that Coffey actually wanted to be the head coach.
Oh, good luck with that.
And so, like, when they brought him in, he was fine with the position, but he kept asking for more and more. And so that's when we saw him completely disappear off the map, right? That's when Gregor and Rashog and all them were like, what's he doing? Where's he going? He's never around anymore. And I guess they said Yeah, no, you're fucked, man. Like, you can't have the head coaching job. Go back to Ontario.
I don't even
So
Yeah, it seemed like a poor experiment.
it was Gretzky's experiment.
Yeah.
Chiarelli and McClellan weren't in on that at all. You could tell when they interviewed them that they're like, "Oh yeah, he's in. It's good to have an extra set of eyes in there and a different perspective." And they're just throwing out the cliches, and they had no intentions of wanting him. And he was there for Gretzky and to see what was going on behind the scenes, and they just had to do something at that point because they're just eating shit.
So let's chat. You put a article out, Sean. Just was it today you put it out?
Yep.
Or So time to hit the reset button. Summarize what your thoughts are, like in the article. And people, if you want to go out and have a read, it's at theoilnight.ca. I think the biggest thing is, just what we talked about, though, is that it's time to quit criticizing everybody and move forward. But what else in there that maybe we didn't cover?
Well, that's pretty much the gist of it. I mean, it's there's not much we can do at this point. We know McClellan's coming back. We know Chiarelli's coming back. So there's no point in being negative about it. I mean, what are we in? It's the end of April, and we got a long ways till the season starts. So for me, no more. And I've been very critical of the coach, but that's it. I'm just going to leave it. I've kind of stated my piece. It'd be nice if everybody just they stated their piece and then we just move on, right? There's nothing we can do to change it. So, I mean, I believe in the core of this team. I mean, when you've got McDavid, Draisaitl, Hopkins, Nurse, all these guys, the core's there. And, the coaches need to get their act together. The GM needs to complement the roster. But everybody gets a clean slate, in my opinion, starting now. We're looking towards the draft. I'm not going to be negative towards any of that. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic, and hopefully they're able to put it together. But, that's pretty much the gist of it. I think for McClellan, he talked about he was looking in the mirror at himself a lot, and he knows he has to make changes. So hopefully he can swallow his pride and he can kind of come up with the necessary adjustments and come out a new coach, and this team has success in the future. So that's pretty much what I talked about today.
Kelly, you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sean's sentiments are true. It's time to move on from a poor year, and the pieces for long-term success are being acquired or have been acquired through either signing or trade or draft. There's, in my opinion, all that's left is tinkering. There shouldn't be the need to make any more big moves unless the next season obviously goes poor again. I wanted to say, like, before we were talking about Fletcher and Chiarelli, if the Oilers did manage to bring Fletcher in, that's a good sign, in my opinion, because they're starting to build a good management team with a solid track history, and that goes along with the coaching staff as well. When you bring in guys like Gulutzan and Yanni to help out with McLennan, right? It's almost Hockey Canada-ish, right? Where they're just bringing these all-star management and coaching staffs to coach the all-star teams that go to the Olympics or the World Championships or whatnot. But I definitely support the Oilers bringing in experienced NHL men to come in and oversee the further development of this team, right? So what do you think about that, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not sure that we need any more people in management than we have. I think they still need to clean out some of the old blood, if you will. But
that's the other thing too, right? You bring in guys from the outside, maybe that offers the Oilers the ability to start cleaning out Housen and McTavish and some of the old boys club, and it starts to take away the power that they seemingly still have, right? With Gretzky being a minority owner, and the Oilers celebrating a championship team every year or two.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of what I was pointing to as well. It's getting rid of some of the old boys club and bringing in an ally for Chiarelli, somebody that he's known for a very long time, and you kind of give him that support, and kind of, like I said, just breaks that up a bit, right? So that's kind of what I was suggesting.
Yeah, maybe Gretzky doesn't come around so much anymore, and maybe they don't have those, alumni celebrations every year so much anymore. Just to move on, like it's just.
I think that's, in my mind, that's the big thing, right? Is this is now the time for. I was kind of hoping that it would be when they opened up Rogers Place, right?
Mm.
That was going to be the time where we move from the old guys to the new, and we start celebrating a new culture. I thought the big ceremony at the first game when they gave the puck to McDavid, I thought that signified something, but it didn't seem to. It seemed to be, a little bit of the same, and some of that had to do with, I think, we had that celebration midway through the season or whichever. Hopefully that's all behind us, and the team can move on a culture that's their own. McDavid and those guys. I'd actually, and it might seem a little sacrilegious to the ex-Oilers, but I'd be all right if they never visited the locker room anymore. If this was just more about them and building their own history and going from there. Let's switch gears, guys, because Friday, May 4th, is the start of the World Hockey Championships. One of the things that crossed my mind, as you guys, we talked about Bill Peters before. What are your thoughts on having your, chief rival coaching three of your best players? Does that bother you at all? I mean, maybe it shouldn't bother me, but it does bother me. Does that get to you guys?
I never really thought of that, but yeah, I don't. I really don't have any thoughts on it. I never crossed my mind. It's World Hockey Championships. I don't know how much structure or system there. He's just going to let them go out and play. But yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
It doesn't bother me. I think I don't know what Bill Peters is going to pick up on Hopkins and McDavid and Nurse that's going to help him in Calgary.
Well, I certainly don't think about it that way, but I can't. I just the guy has no vested interest in the health of our players, right? And so, in fact, you might say he's got a vested interest that they're not healthy come regular season time. And I would like to think that there's no coach in the league that would ever, put a player at risk, even if they played for a rival. But it just bothers me a little bit, and maybe it shouldn't. Obviously, the two of you haven't thought about it. I could be the only one.
I think you're
McClellan.
That's right.
McClellan coached him too, right?
Yeah,
he coached Team Canada when they had. It was Hall and McDavid and Eberle, wasn't it? And I think he played the shit out of them, even though he's going to be Oilers coach. So, and there's lots of time. The worst thing that can happen is they blow out a knee or they bust their shoulder up. Some real catastrophic injury. But it's hard to say that that's the coach has a hand in that. And there's how long is that tournament? Maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, it goes. I think until the 20th of May. So it's 3 weeks, 2 weeks.
Yeah, so and then they have the off season to recover if anything does happen and rehab and stuff like that. So it's not. I don't think too much could happen. Apart from the odd blown ACL.
I'm concerned with Sekera playing. He was hurt for most of the year, and the end of the year they looked like they shut him down, and he's over there playing in the World Championships. If anything, he'd be the one guy I'd be worried about.
I think he wants out. That's what it tells me. I think the team said, "Hey man, what are you doing? we're shutting you down, and we could have played you, but you're struggling, and so we shut you down. Why are you going to play in the World Championships? And for him to do that sounds pretty defiant, in my opinion. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if the Oilers kind of bit the bullet and tried to move him with that first rounder. That's a trade scenario that's out there.
Who do we have playing in the World Championships this year? We've got Sekera playing, RNH, Nurse,
Draisaitl.
Larson.
Is Larson playing too? Anybody else?
Is Nurse playing?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
There, let's just have a look. I guess, Larson's playing.
And Sekera, we said, right?
V2?
What about
Is
Albert?
V2 playing? Yeah.
He's playing for France.
Is France even in?
Yeah, I saw a picture of Draisaitl and OV2 on the ice together.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
They're sponsored jerseys.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like France is in, so you got to figure V2 would be in there.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
probably the Michael Jordan over there.
Yeah.
Well, they got a young kid, a really young kid, 18, 19 years old.
Really?
That's supposed to be fair. I think Dallas drafted him. Can't remember, though. There's a few Oilers going out to play, but there's always a few Oilers going out to play in the World Championships, isn't there?
Yeah, Taylor Hall has declined, I heard, as well. I was curious when he was done whether or not he'd play, given a chance to play with some of his old line mates. Is Eberle going back?
Eberle's playing. Barzal's playing.
Yeah, that's right.
They put Josh Bailey on McDavid's line.
That's right. I remember Sean, you saying it would be great if they put Eberle and Barzal on McDavid's line, have them light it up.
That wasn't me, but I don't.
That was me. I said
that was sorry.
Yeah.
Jerk.
Oh yeah.
we didn't talk about the Hart Trophy today.
Yeah, did you guys see not Pugliarvi, David Staples had that funny little graphic with the not valuable. What do you guys think about that? So Hart Trophy, should McDavid be on that list? Should he not? And did you see that graphic, Sean?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So for those that haven't seen it, in essence, it had the top 10, top 20 scorers on there, and I think it said, was it not valuable, and then worthless, and it had the top 5 was not as valuable. And then, of course, the 3 that were up for Hart Trophy are sitting, where are they, in the 5th, 6th, and 7th, or 4th, 5th, and 6th, or something?
Well, the most ridiculous thing for me, if you believe that you have to make the playoffs, which I think is stupid, but if you think you have to make the playoffs to be MVP in the conversation, okay, well then McDavid's not in. I still think he should be in. But if you just compare, and I put a tweet out there the other day, and it drives me nuts. Like, Claude Giroux has the second most points in the NHL the last 7 years. The guy gets no respect. He was second in points this year. So if you just compare Giroux's numbers to Kopitar, Giroux had 34 goals and 68 assists, 102 points. Kopitar had 35 goals, 57 assists, 92 points. So Giroux had 10 more points. Giroux was a plus 28. Kopitar was a plus 21. And both teams had 98 points making the playoffs. So the exact same output for points. And Giroux switched positions, played left wing, and his center was Couturier, who never had more than 39 points in a 6-year career, gets 76 points, 31 goals playing with Giroux. Giroux gets 19 goals in the last 29 games to carry them in the playoffs. They had no goalies. They're playing like their third-string goalies, and their defense is garbage. And Giroux doesn't even get nominated. Second leading scorer this year, doesn't even get nominated in the top 3. That's ridiculous. I don't know how you could vote for Kopitar over Giroux. Giroux beats him in every category. How do you vote for Kopitar? I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. I'm maybe not as big on Giroux, but you know what? I don't see enough of Giroux, right? We see more of Kopitar, but I didn't actually I thought Kopitar had a bounce back year. We've always known him to be a roughly a point a game player. He doesn't strike me as being the most valuable player on that team.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say that. He's the most valuable player on that team, but most outstanding or most what's the actual definition? Most valuable to the team.
Well, you could argue Doughty or Quick, right? But
yeah, like Quick. If you're going to take somebody from the Kings, I would say Quick, right? And that's what the Hart Trophy is about, right? Most outstanding to their team, or most. Damn it! I gotta get the. You guys chat for a second. I'm gonna get the definition of the Hart Trophy.
What do you mean?
Well, the guys that pick the nominations for the Heart of the writers, correct?
Yeah.
And so, what are writers like? They like big stories. And what bigger stories are Hall's 26-game point streak, McKinnon, the Colorado Avalanche being a 40-point team last year and their playoff team this year.
Yeah.
And Kopitar's ridiculous bounce back. Those stories are way more tasty than, the best player in the game winning the scoring championship for the second year in a row. Right. So I think it's all on that narrative that there's story behind those selections. And that's what they went for, because it's stupid, because the Devils weren't going to make the playoffs if it wasn't for Keith Kincaid going on a heater at the end of the season there. There's no way they would have had a lottery team with a 90-point left winger if it wasn't for their goaltending. And Corey Schneider makes $6 million a year and doesn't win a game from Christmas until the first round of the playoffs. You tell me Lucic had a bad year? Fucking that's a starting goalie in the NHL.
And that's kind of my point too with Philly. Like, their goaltending was awful. So how the hell did they get into the playoffs? And playing a new position and all that stuff. I mean, I watched a lot of Philly games this year. It's probably between Philly and Detroit. Those are the two teams that I really fall outside of the Oilers for different reasons. But Drew had an unbelievable year, and you're second in scoring. Like, give me a break. I don't understand how.
Voracek had a good year too. So Couturier really benefited from.
Well, the thing is, they didn't really play a lot together. Like, Voracek was. I mean, they did for a little bit at the beginning, but for the majority of the season, they had Konechny up on the top line, and they had Voracek and Simmons playing with Patrick, and it's funny. Simmons tore his pelvis in October, and all the injuries they were talking about that he had, he played the whole season hurt. But people were ripping him for it. But he didn't complain once.
So, what do you guys think about, obviously we had Hall, McDavid, and what was Ted Lindsay? Was Hall, McDavid, and McKinnon, right?
Yep.
Is it the writers that are stifling the Ted Lindsay Award from being the award, right? Or
what was it called before? So the Lester Pearson?
No, jeez. That's God, you guys are making me. By the way, the Hart Trophy is player judged most valuable to his team. It's driving me nuts. I'm sure somebody that'd be listening to this would be yelling it at my podcast right now. Ted Lindsay, Lester B. Pearson, yeah.
It's never had that much notoriety. It's never been oh sweet, that guy won the Lester Pearson. He's obviously the best, because the players are the ones that vote on that trophy. It gets less publicity.
That to me gives it the most credibility, right?
Yeah, of course, but shouldn't it be the other way around? Like the Hart Trophy should be voted by the players. The Ted Lindsay can be voted by the writers, right?
Yeah, I think that in terms of who does what. Both awards are very similar in what they're trying to achieve, with the exception of who's doing the voting, right? And the Ted Lindsay is most outstanding player, where the Hart is judged most valuable to the team. So, I guess they do have a bit of a, a bit of a difference. But I think in terms of a like what's always sort of gets the most talk about is the Hart Trophy, right? And what I'm saying is, we should be talking about the Ted Lindsay more, talking about the Ted Lindsay Award year after year, and the Art Ross for the scoring, obviously, and the Vezina. But the Ted Lindsay seems to be the award that kind of gets swept off to the side, right? Like, I mean, in my mind, if it's your peers that are voting you the best.
Yeah, and the guy that actually wins, I think he probably appreciates that more than a bunch of riders that have never played the game in their life. It's the Hart Trophy is basically, the rider's opinion award, right? So if your peers vote you as the most valuable or as the best player, I think that's more of a compliment than the riders.
Yeah, and clearly I mean, you're exactly right, and clearly the biggest part of why Connor McDavid is not a Hart Trophy finalist today is the playoffs. After this year, they might as well just put that into the definition of the.
Yeah, make it a stipulation.
Yeah.
So if you make the playoffs and you get swept the first round, well, that's better than not making the playoffs. So you're still more valuable. Like, whatever. So
McKinnon, Kopitar, and Hall all outed in the first round too, right?
Yeah, that's just silly.
So I mean, big deal. They made it to the playoffs. They didn't get it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right? So maybe the writers rethink things a little bit going to next year when they start doing their voting again, or what.
It just gives them a sense of purpose and make them feel part of the league. You get to vote because you write. You get to vote on who.
Yeah, I'm all right with that. There's just some of them that seem a little bit too high and mighty on some of these things. Both local Oilers media and some of the national sports media, but I don't mind. There being an outsiders. These guys watch every game. I think they probably watch. Well, they don't watch every game, but they probably watch more than the players watch. But if they watched McDavid and the Oilers as much as we do, it's not hard to see that without McDavid, the Oilers, would have a hard time being, even where they were at this year. He certainly, you can't argue for how valuable he is to a team, any team. In fact, he would just up the capability of any team. If in my mind, he's the easy choice 2 years for the last 2 years. Right.
Yep.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, guys, you know what? I mean, that's, as always, we're well over the allotted time that I like to keep it to. It's not going to be, I think, as we said, a lot more news now until a little ways in. We'll watch the World Hockey Championships, see some of the Oilers play. Any parting thoughts, guys, before we shut it down for the night?
No, I think, did you guys have your picks for the playoffs? For the second round?
I picked LA to go to the Cup, so I'm finished. I always look for that sleeper. Everybody always picks the favorites, right? So I'm like, all right, last year I picked Columbus, and they went out first round. So a good rule of thumb, just when I fill out my bracket, pretty much do the opposite, and you're guaranteed to win.
So I always I try to get my heart out of it. This year on my bracket, I voted a little bit with my heart in hoping that Vegas would be out early. So I voted against them in the first round. I was 6-2, so I didn't. I thought LA would take Vegas. I didn't. I don't know if I honestly believe that or if it was just sort of my gut, my wishful thinking rather. And then the other one that I got wrong. Trying to remember. I'll remember, but I'm taking. I'm still going with Washington. I think that they're going to break the curse this year. So I know they lost the first game in pure Washington fashion, Boston, I'll take in 6. My feeling is they're so good. I watched that whole Toronto-Boston series. Boston's got a hell of a team. Hate Marchand or not, that line is absolutely phenomenal. Nashville in 7. Did you guys watch that Winnipeg Nashville game? Because that was the single most dominant game of the playoffs this year, and Nashville lost. So yeah, it was not a dominant game by Winnipeg. You can say what you want. I mean, I have some Winnipeg Jets fans who, when I say that was so dominant by Nashville, they say, yeah, well, the shots were from the outside. It doesn't matter. The whole play was spent in the Winnipeg zone. They had under 20 shots for the game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's just ridiculous. And then I did take I went against my heart this time. I took Vegas in 6, but after tonight's game, maybe San Jose can make a play for that. But that pains me if they make it through to the third round. I really hope that they're out. I think, Sean, you and I agree on that. What do you guys... so you're not taking LA anymore. Do you have any new thoughts in terms of who might go forward? I know you said you're not as into it this year right now.
Yeah, I'll just stick with the Stanley Cup champions, Pittsburgh. They're the champs till someone beats them.
Yeah, fair enough. Kelly?
I said Tampa, Pittsburgh, Nashville, and Vegas.
So we've got the West the same, but we're opposites on the East. All right. Well, you know what? We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
Okay, guys. Next up is World Hockey Championships, and then who the Oilers pick. Okay, we'll call it a night. Thanks, guys.
Oilers Live.